now is a good friend of mine, a culture warrior, if there ever was one, author of the not New York Times bestselling book, Don't Burn This Country, Dave Rubin. Dave, good to see you.
Liz, it's nice to see you. It's true. We did not make the New York Times bestseller list. We should have been number 2 by sales, but the New York Times bestseller list is not about sales. It's about something else, Liz, perhaps political agenda.
And by the way, anybody who wants to see this interview and interviews like this with early access, exclusive early access, you can join us on the Liz Wheeler Show community on Locals. That is lizwheelershow.com/locals. If you use my promo code ACCESS, then you can get 1 month free on your annual subscription. Here's a question for you, though. This book is very aptly timed, right? We are in the middle of watching what's happening in your new home state in Florida. We're watching DeSantis take on Disney. We're watching woke corporations begin to get the idea that we will come after them if they start pushing radical leftist ideology on us and on our children. It's very well known at this point. You've told us, you've been telling us for several years why you left the left, right? Why you were a disaffected liberal. You identified as a classical liberal for a while, meaning you weren't a Democrat, but you weren't quite a conservative either. Now, if I am not mistaken, you have actively joined the right. Tell me about that part of the evolution.
Well, Liz, it was ultimately when you sent me those cookies, and I just felt it's time. It's a good question because, I was the why I left the left guy, right? For years, I did this very big video on PragerU that probably has 20 or 30 million views. And so many people kept associating me with that. And I was really one of the first people to be saying, hey, me as a liberal, as a lefty, as a guy that was a Bernie supporter in 2015, as a former Democrat, I was never like waving around the flag of the donkey, but like I was a Democrat. I was saying, hey, we are not defending free speech. We are not acting liberally. We cannot keep labeling all of our opponents racist and bigots and all of those things. And then from that, I started talking to scary conservatives like Glenn Beck and Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager and Liz Wheeler. And next thing you know, I find them to all be quite lovely people. And perhaps we have some political disagreements. It just doesn't matter. We're all proud to be American, and we want this country to be as strong and wonderful as it can be, and to honor our parents and grandparents who had it much harder than us and all of that good stuff. So I was sort of on this evolution. And I would say in the last year or so, I don't have a problem saying the C word. And you know which C word I'm talking about, Liz. I am talking about the conservative word, the scariest of all, because in essence, at this point, while maybe I have some marginal disagreements with the Republican Party, I mean, and there's a difference between a ideology and a political party. A political party is an apparatus that is to hopefully, if they do it right, is the best vehicle to get ideas across into the political system, where an ideology are the things that you actually believe. The political party may not be so good at doing those things. So I don't consider myself a Republican in a sort of traditional sense, but obviously I'm a conservative. I want to conserve America. I want to defend free speech. I believe in capitalism. I believe in individualism. I believe our founding was just and that our founding documents are extraordinary. And by the way, conservatives, I mean, the beauty of conservatism, this is not something that they will tell you on CNN or in the New York Times, but conservatives do have a plurality of opinion, even on the most heartfelt and emotional topics. So I'm sure you're going to bring up abortion at some point. I mean, Rudy Giuliani is obviously a conservative. No one doubts that Rudy Giuliani is a conservative. And, he was a Trump supporter. And before that, at one time, he was the leading presidential candidate for Republicans, 15 years ago or so. And he's been pro-choice his whole life. He's begrudgingly pro-choice. He believes that there has to be a certain window. And obviously, he's a conservative. So conservatives have shown that there is a willingness. It doesn't mean that you have to abandon your ideals, but there's a willingness to understand, hey, we live in a country with a lot of people and we have to argue things out. And then hopefully over time, you'll win your argument. So I have no problem being called a conservative.
So the fun part about interviewing your friends is you can predict what they're going to ask you sometimes, even though I have not told you at all what I'm going to say. So you're correct. I am going to ask you about abortion.
Yes.
As a conservative, are you pro-life now?
Okay. So as I wrote in Don't Burn This book, and I didn't really get into abortion in Don't Burn This Country, but I've obviously been talking a lot about it lately. And as you know, we're having kids. So I'm very intimately aware of everything that goes on. We're doing it through IVF. So once you know about IVF and you have a fertility doctor, you're intimately aware of the sperm meeting the egg, and that obviously is the beginning of life. and they can quite literally tell you the gender the next day. So my doctor is either a complete insane person or gender actually does exist because he can tell it to you the next day when they look at the embryos. My feeling is this, that I just said begrudgingly pro-choice when it came to Rudy Giuliani. That still is my position. And what I mean by that is that you want abortion, hopefully not to happen, but that it should be safe and rare in certain specific cases. That although I do not deny that the genesis of life is the moment that the sperm meets the egg, I do think that there is a difference between cells multiplying and then when the body starts forming and the heartbeat and brain activity and when the fetus can feel pain and all of those things. We could do this. We've done this privately, and we could spend hours and hours in the rest of our life talking about it, and I think that's fine. But what's interesting about the decision specifically, this Roe v. Wade decision, is that I don't know if you know this, but Florida last month had passed a 15-week ban on abortion. Now that's 3.5 months in. That's longer than even someone like me would call for. I would say 12 weeks would be fine. Now I know you wouldn't be happy with that, but the point is that we have Florida, which is now thought of as a red state, and it's a scary Republican place, and Ron DeSantis is in charge of Florida. Florida passed this. It's going into effect in July, and it was to no fanfare. Most people thought it was a fair agreement. Now, again, both sides may not be happy with it because the left wants 8-month abortions, and obviously the most pro-life person wants no abortions. But the point is that the states have been going through their own experiment of what they can do and when they can do it. And I think that's interesting. And that's why I have no problem with the reversal of Roe v. Wade. There's no constitutional right to an abortion. You can leave it up to the states. And then, if Alabama 100% outlaws abortion, then congratulations, Gavin Newsom can bus you in and they can have abortion parks in California.
Which, by the way, is so grotesque to see.
Horrifically
California.
grotesque. Yeah.
It's so grotesque. Let me ask you this. Do you think there's a dichotomy between your acknowledging that the genesis of life starts when a sperm meets an egg and a political position that allows for abortion through the 12-week standard that you said? Is there a dichotomy between those positions?
I don't know that dichotomy is exactly the right word. I understand that there's a difference between sort of personal beliefs and what public policy is. So this is where policy is just sort of messy. So we could outlaw abortion, period. Now, first off, as we both know, that's not going to stop abortions. It's going to make abortions a lot less safe, particularly for low-income people. Because if you outlaw abortion completely, 100% in 50 states, regardless of rape and incest and the health of the fetus, the health of the mother and all of those things, a certain set of people are going to get abortions. People with means will still find doctors to give them abortions that will be illegal and they'll be okay. But a lot of poor people are going to have abortions that will not be. That's not a justification for legalizing abortion. It's just a reality that I think it's important that we acknowledge. On the other side of that, I don't deny, because I'm not denying that it's life. What I am acknowledging is that I believe, and I think most people, and you've been pregnant, I mean, the difference between cells splitting and then, say, the heartbeat, there's a difference in the form there. It just is. It doesn't deny that it is life. But this is where we would get into more of a conversation that would be sort of religious and existential about the soul and all sorts of other things. And again, a society, a free society that has 350 million people that come from every walk of life and every religious view or purely secular view and everything else, has to figure out what the compromise is. And it's messy and it's murky. But yeah, I feel that 12 weeks is basically the right position. I don't love it. And by the way, I would do everything possible that if a young girl, a 16-year-old girl was pregnant and she didn't want that pregnancy, I think one thing Republicans could be doing right now, or conservatives could be doing, is do more with nonprofits now. I know that some exist, but do more to say, hey, if you're a pregnant young girl and you're nervous and you don't want that baby and because you're worried about the rest of your life and all of those things, we will help you through the 9 months, and then we'll make sure that baby goes to a good family or something. Like, there are some more things that we could do besides just kicking all of this to the government.
Right. I think that's fair. I think that's fair to call for more help for these women. I do think pregnancy centers, crisis pregnancy centers across the country are doing and have done a fabulous job of this. They just don't get the credit they deserve. Let me push back on one thing, because this is the interesting part, right, of Roe v. Wade being overturned, is that these conversations, which a lot of people find to be uncomfortable. We don't. We're friends, but these are conversations
we've
that
done
have
this
to happen.
over drinks, although you don't drink. So it was me drinking with you having soda.
Exactly. We've talked about this many times. So if the heartbeat is a critical point for you in differentiating between right and wrong, and this is even putting what you call the existential conversation about when a soul in a person is created in that person. I, as a Catholic, believe that happens the moment of conception. But a heartbeat happens in a baby far earlier than 12 weeks. I mean, at my 6-week appointment, when I was pregnant with my daughter, we heard her little heartbeat. It was, it was beating at 173 beats per minute. And we could see her. She looked like a little pea in there, but we could see that. So would the logical point not be 12 weeks, but be closer to when you can hear the heartbeat?
Well, that's why I would kick it back to the States. So I was giving you 12 weeks again, because I'm trying to come up with something that it's one of those things where there's no comfortable answer here. There just isn't a comfortable answer here. So I wasn't saying 12 weeks like that's where it has to be everywhere, and that's right, because that would be me in essence saying I should be the Supreme Court right now, and that's how it should work. Look, Florida said 15, Texas said 6. So obviously you would prefer the 6, let's say, even though I know you want 0. So that's fine. So this is where the experiment of the states works in essence. And again, if you live in a state that has no abortion and you want an abortion, you'll be able to travel over state lines. And if you live in a state that has endless abortion, which is what California for sure is going to have, and probably New York and a few other states, and you're really disgusted by the moral view of your state, congratulations, you're allowed to leave that state. So this is the experiment working, even though the conversation often gets completely glossed over. And as I've said on my show a couple of times in the last few days, I honestly think probably 30 to 40% of Americans believe that Roe v. Wade being reversed or being struck down, it means that abortion is going to be illegal. People just don't even understand what the basic issues are related to this, which is why there are so many hysterical kids protesting at houses and Democrats like Elizabeth Warren having nervous breakdowns wherever they are seen in public.
Right. Well, that's the intention of the left, right? To lie to people, to gin up fear so that they can use people to, well, be angry mobs outside of Supreme Court justices' homes. Let me pivot just a little bit. In this state versus federal thing that we're doing right now,
sure.
Who do you prefer for 2024? Ron DeSantis for president or Trump for president?
Wow, she's going all in right at the top. Look, I think you can make good arguments for both. I'll give you the Trump version first, which is Trump has 2 major issues that he has to deal with. Number one, if he runs, let's say Trump announces right now as we're talking, 5 million people who probably won't vote will vote just out of hatred of Trump. I'm just picking a number, but we know that it's millions of people who just have Trump derangement syndrome, who probably, the Democratic base is so depressed right now, right? No one's walking around going, things are great, and Biden is on the ball, and boy, the country's in wonderful shape. So you're going to have a depressed turnout for the Democrats, assuming it's even Biden being president at that point, which, who knows? I mean, the guy's health obviously is not great. But if Trump announces, then you magically fire up the left base. That's a problem, number one. And then the second problem is that if Trump believes that the election was stolen, which I believe he believes, then unless he has done anything to secure the election going forward at the state level and really checked that the machinery is not as corrupt as he would lead us to believe it is, then his candidacy makes no sense. So Trump has to deal with those 2 issues. That's number one. Number two, I can tell you as a Floridian, I love Ron DeSantis. I think he has set the great conditions of freedom here. You've been to my place. You see how happy I am here. And there's lizards and alligators and peacocks. And I just love the whole place. And it's just flourishing. Florida is exploding and flourishing. I love it. I want to keep Florida, and I want to make America Florida. I don't know that Ron DeSantis he loves Florida. And the guy has his own reelection coming up in November, by the way, which I want him to win, in a crazy landslide. And then he'll make a decision about what he has to do going forward. My preference on all of this, honestly, would be that you'd have the 2 of them sit down either at the governor's mansion or at Mar-a-Lago and really figure out, hey, what can we both do? DeSantis, you're obviously the future. Trump, it's a little hard to say. Is he quite the president? Is he the past? Is there a degree of future there? But can we do this thing together, whatever that means? And can we come up to an agreement? Because you throw these 2 things together and it's unstoppable. So I hope that's enough of an answer for now.
That's the most political answer that I will tolerate on my show, but I will let it slide. Let me ask you about election integrity, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk because Dinesh D'Souza released his documentary 2000 Mules, and it might be the top topic that's being talked about among at least conservatives in the Republican Party. Did you watch it, and what do you think of the allegations that he documented in this piece?
Yeah, I did watch it. I'm also very proud to say that he launched it on Locals, which, as you know, not only are you one of the biggest Locals creators we have, but it is the company that I started myself, and eventually we merged with Rumble. So the fact that that he launched it on Locals, and then it was a top 10 grossing movie of this past weekend, like, we're actually really changing the game on how movies can be produced and released. So I'm very excited about that. As for the content, look, he makes a very compelling case. You know, they use all this geotagging to figure out where these mules, these people who often would take 3 or 7 or 10 or 20 ballots and be dropping them off in all of these odd locations at very weird times at night and doing it repeatedly. And you see video evidence that you can tell these are not the most upstanding citizens, and where are they getting these ballots, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's in there. It's a very compelling case. I don't know that it's a fully airtight case, but what I would say is that everyone should watch it and think about it for yourself.
I am just so proud of you for creating a true parallel economy for creators like me and like Dinesh and like yourself and like so many other conservatives, where I actually have the confidence on Locals that I can talk to people about things that are important, whether it is election integrity or COVID vaccines or transgenderism being taught to children in school, all of these things that we're not allowed to talk about on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. We can actually have these conversations. It's more of a relationship on COVID. And I'm not only grateful to you, I'm really proud of you for doing this right, doing it well. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, anybody who wants to know what I think, tune into my show, because we are doing a complete breakdown of 2000 Mules and the allegations and what exactly they mean. Last question for you. Target has begun to sell underwear. And when I say underwear, I'm talking about chest binders and packing underwear. It's transgender underwear. What are your thoughts on this? And should conservatives boycott Target?
Look, it's such nonsense. And this is what they do with everything. These corporations go woke and they go broke. And, you know, look what's happened to Disney. They've lost $41 billion of market share, $41 billion of revenue, in essence, the value of the company. Since they got into this fight with DeSantis. I suspect Target will have a similar thing. Look, I like Target as much as the next guy. I like going into a big box store and you can find all sorts of fun stuff. And, you know, Chip and Joanna have their kitchen stuff in there. And all right, the wood candles, they're pretty good. Okay. But obviously I would not be buying this stuff. It's ridiculous that they're putting it in there. There simply isn't enough market. So what they're saying to you is, hey, we are doing something for a political reason rather than a sales reason, which is why the go woke, go broke thing makes sense. You start doing things that are counter to what your mission should be as a company, which is to sell products. I thought that's what Target was in business for, to sell products that kind of look expensive, but they're cheap. That was Target's idea, which is why people called it Target. And now they're selling all of this stuff. But I would say it's somewhat similar to what they did with the BLM products. You know, they went very big on BLM products and Black-owned designers and shirts and pants and all these things. And it's like, Liz, to be quite honest with you, I don't care whether the designer of my shirt is Black or white or gay or straight. I like a shirt that fits right, that feels good, that's made of nice material, that probably isn't too expensive. That works for me. But they decide to put political ideology in everything. I don't know that people have to outright boycott, but you should vote with your dollars. That's not cancel culture. Saying, hey, I don't want to support things that are bringing things into society that are not congruent with my beliefs. That's not cancel culture. I'm not saying, you know, that what that is actual, that's the free market at work. So I think it's all good.
Yeah, I largely agree with that. I know that boycotts work. I'm hesitant to boycott. I do think we should raise our voices and warn Target that we will boycott if they continue to pick ideology over us as their consumer. Dave, tell people where they can find your book and the number one reason why they should read this.
Well, you can get the book at don'tburnthisbook.com, which has all the links to all the places you can get the book. And I would recommend you get it at a local bookstore instead of Target, let's say, or instead of Amazon. And the number one reason to buy the book is that it's really a how-to guide. You know, in the subtitle, I say it's surviving and thriving in our woke dystopia. And I don't want people just to survive. We're all just surviving. Oh, they locked us down. They didn't let us go to work. They put masks on us. Okay, we survived that. But there's ways to thrive. I've figured out ways to thrive in these last couple of years. And there's a lot of ways to do it, whether it's moving to a place that's more in line with your values, or whether it's not spending $100,000 to get a degree in lesbian archery that doesn't really do much for you in your you like lesbian archery? I could see you wanted to laugh. You kind of held it back for some reason, but that was pretty good.
That was very funny. Very well done.
Thank you, Liz. There are a lot of things that you can do, and that's really what it is. It's a nuts and bolts. What can I do to survive and thrive, really, to really live to my maximum potential in this very weird time that we live in?
And we certainly need that. What people can't see is that you're not only doing this theoretically right now, you're on your pool deck and you're only wearing half a suit. Your feet are dipping in the water because you are thriving in Florida. Author of the not New York Times bestselling book, Don't Burn This Country. Dave, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.